Today we're out in the field. We're going to talk about gathering some resources. Those resources, mainly for surviving in an environment like this, are related to our fires. We're going to talk about how to gather tinder, kindling, and look for sources of fuel out here in the Nevada desert. As you can see, today's conditions are not that conducive to fire starting. It's overcast, cloudy, wet, moist. Not exactly ideal conditions for starting a fire, but we'll see what we can gather, see what we can get going. That's today on this episode from Blue Line Bushcraft. First source we're going to take a look at is this stuff here. You can see it stands nice and tall off the desert floor. It has these nice little fine tips all over it. So it's not going to be affected that much by moisture on the ground. Might pick up some from the atmosphere, but since it's standing tall like this, it's going to be a lot easier for us to dry out even if we put it against our body. And once you gather a bunch of it, you end up with something like this. Nice little bundle. And you can see a lot of fine fibers in there that if we process this a little bit more, it would help accept a flame in addition to some of the other stuff we're going to find out here in the desert. So in addition to this stuff that we found, another great source of fire tinder in the Nevada desert is cheatgrass. This stuff's pretty abundant. It doesn't stand that tall, so it is susceptible to getting tamped down by the snow once it's down on the ground. It's not that useful, but around little rock outcroppings such as this one, you can usually find some in the winter still dead and standing. In the summer you can find it everywhere. But as you can see right on the tips, these little guys can be worked down, processed to a really fine material, and they will help accept spark in the desert. So one tinder that I really like is if you find some old sagebrush, usually you can tear this stuff off of it. And this stuff, when it's processed, you want to get enough of it, make yourself a bird's nest. It is awesome. But you can see it's just like these old layers of bark. Just kind of peels off this old stump of sagebrush. That's a little moist right there. But you want to go for the dry stuff, and you can really get a bunch of stuff. And this stuff will help make an incredible base for your bird's nest. Now, as far as fuel goes and kindling, there's not going to be much out here. I mean, ideally, you'd want to find yourself like a pinyon juniper or something like that. But dead stumps of sagebrush, like this one, I mean, they can provide you fuel enough to stay relatively warm and at least get a cooking fire going. So you can find stuff like this, spend some time gathering, and get yourself a successful, sustainable fire. Again, here's just another example of a rather sizable amount of dead sagebrush. I mean, that's probably at least 5-6 feet long. So I mean, you could get several hours worth of burn out of just that one dead plant alone. So you just got to keep your eyes out, gather resources, and you can definitely make a sustainable fire out here in the Nevada desert. So I just wanted to stop here and show you an example of just one piece of sagebrush here that probably has just about everything we would need. You can see up in there, I'd probably be able to get my decomposing bark, stuff like that. And then over here on this side, you can see there's an abundance of very tiny tinders, grasses, whatnot, even some of these branches on this piece of sagebrush. So then adjacent to that, we have some deadwood that would probably suffice for some kindling as we got our fire going. So again, you don't have to look far to find these resources. They're all around you. Collected some stuff. Once I get to a good spot where I can set up on my tripod and whatnot, I will show you making my bird's nest, getting that real small dry tinder in there, and getting a fire going using a ferrocerium rod. Also going to demo the fire plugs I talked about, as well as that pyro putty, just to show you their burn time. But all that once I get back and am able to set up on a tripod. So I'll see you then. So we're out of the field in more controlled conditions, like I promised, coming to you from the porch. What you just saw was an overview of all the materials that I collected while I was out in the field. Of course, you saw my fire kit that I've previously reviewed. You can find a link to that review up here. And also, in this video, we're going to go ahead and demonstrate the burn time on the Pyro Putty winter blend, as well as the Blackbeard fire plugs. And then we're going to go over building a bird's nest out of the materials we collected. We'll start with the sagebrush bark that I tore from the bases of sagebrush, build a base, follow that by some processed grasses, a little bit of tinder on the side, and then of course over here we have our kindling building up to fuel for the main fire. So we'll get into those burn tests right now. So as I've mentioned in previous videos, these are great fire starting tools. These are the Blackbeard fire plugs. You open them up here. There's 50 in this bag. There's a link to it in my description if you're interested. But what you have here is just these little plugs, and inside a bunch of different material. You can kind of tear it up a little if you want to, you know, loosen it up here, but it's really not necessary. And we'll get into lighting one of these and do a quick burn test. All right, so what you can see here is I've loosened it up a little bit. I have my knife and my ferro rod. We're gonna try lighting it with this. To be honest, I've never tried this before, so we'll see if we can get this Blackbeard fire plug started with a ferrocerium rod and Bushcraft knife. There you go, one hit. It is flaming, as you can see, so we'll go ahead and start the burn time test. All right, as you can see, it's starting to dwindle down. Still a fair amount there. We can kind of agitate it with the knife here and get a little bit more burn time. But as you can see from this, this one little fire plug has more than enough burn time to get even your most stubborn of fuels ignited. All right, same experiment here, this time with the winter blend from Pyro Putty. Tried to get about the same amount here. You can see I pulled it out of the tin, pulled it apart. Again, this is the Pyro Putty winter blend. And we'll go ahead and get started with this one, but same thing, just a small amount. I'm gonna see if I can strike it and get it going with the ferrocerium rod, and we'll see how long this one goes. All right, so that one took a couple more strikes than the Blackbeard one. Probably not because of the fire starting material itself, probably more my aim. But we'll let this thing go and see how long it burns. So this was the Pyro Putty winter blend. As you can see, it burned pretty well. Seemed to be a little bit more intense than the Blackbeard fire plug. Took a couple more strikes to get lighted, but as you can see, and I just flipped it over there, it burns pretty well. It does put off quite a bit more black smoke than the fire plug did, but obviously from what you're seeing, and I'll let this one keep burning until it extinguishes itself, both super viable options for starting fire in difficult conditions. All right, so now we're gonna go ahead and take those materials that we got out in the field and start working them down into a bird's nest. I'm gonna go ahead and start with the sagebrush bark. And what you wanna do here is just process this down. You just wanna tear it apart and really get it into fine strips. You can grab it and kind of break up those fibers. And what you're looking to do is just get some of these real fine fibers that will easily accept spark and flame once we get to that point. So basically you're just taking this and you're grinding it up against itself, just getting it really nice and fine and well processed here. And then as you're doing that, I mean, you can see all this fine stuff down here that I'm collecting. A lot of that we won't want because some of that might actually snuff out flames, but what we're working towards here is, you can see I'm starting to make kind of a little container here is what I'm after. So we'll just keep wrapping this stuff around and keep trying to make a little bowl by breaking these fibers down as much as we can. And as you can see, I'm starting to form a little bowl here. Alright, I'm feeling pretty good about that. I'm going to scoot some of this stuff aside because we'll come back to that in a minute. But as you can see here, I've got a pretty good little base for my bird's nest to get going here. And again, this is all materials from the Nevada desert. So next I'm going to take my grass here and I'm going to go ahead and start processing it down. Now I really want to get this real fine because this is what I suspect you know, is going to take my spark. So I'm going to break it apart and start processing this down into some real fine fibers. Just going to start placing some of that here in the middle. And again, the key to this is to really just break it down so that you're just dealing with these real fine, dry fibers that are going to catch the sparks from the ferrocerium rod when we hit it. All right, kind of liking that. Last, we'll take some of this little bit larger tinder, kind of wrap it around the top here. Just kind of give it a little nest here because we're going to throw our sparks. I don't know if you can see this, but we want to throw our sparks kind of right into this pocket when we get to it. And once it's going, we'll just slowly blow on it and hopefully get this whole bundle going. A little bit more of this fine grass. All right, put some of this aside. So hopefully I can kind of show you this on the camera, but what I've got here is obviously my sagebrush underneath, but then I've got this real small pocket here and I'm going to be throwing the sparks right up into here and hopefully they'll catch it. There's some real fine stuff. I don't know that you can probably make it out on a camera, but that will ultimately catch our sparks and get us going. So I'm going to grab my fireproof pan, lay this in it just for safety since I'm on my porch here, and I do have this fireproof mat. But we'll see if we can get this going. And then the last ingredient here that I do have is just a little bit of larger almost kindling at this point, just to put on once this bird's nest is fully going. So be right back. We'll get that set up and we'll see if we can get this lit. All right, so we're back, and like I was talking about, you can kind of see right in there, this is where I'm going to cast the sparks from the ferrocerium rod when I strike it. So I'm going to go ahead and put it down over here, kind of strike from the side, so hopefully you can see it and see this catching it, and then we'll go from there. All right, so as you can see, it lit right up, and yeah, I mean, it's going. So this is how we would do it. You can see I've got good flame going and would have more than enough time to get things going here. So at this point, you can start to add, you know, some of your bigger kindling and such. And that is how you start a fire in the desert. So of course from here, we could go ahead and get our larger fuels, start adding those on. I'm not going to, since we're just here demonstrating. However, you can see just from sagebrush bark, grasses, ferrocerium rod, one hit, took right away, and we're off to the races with a fire. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on Blue Line Bushcraft.